my name is Marley and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my May reading wrap up. So talking about all the books that I read in the month of May. Sorry if I'm squinting in this video at all. I'm filming in front of a window and it's actually like very bright. Anyways, I read 7 books this month, which is pretty good. That's kind of been my average the last couple months. So I wouldn't mind if I like started to step it up a little bit, but you know, it's not bad. So I'm going to be talking about those books. And for now, let's look at some of my stats for the month. I've been trying to do this each month. I don't know if they're really that interesting, but I get most of them from Storygraph. So let's pull that up now because I forgot to earlier. Okay, so as I said, I read 7 books and that amounted to about 2,771 pages, give or take. The moods I mostly read from were mysterious, dark, and emotional, which I feel like at this point I'm just repeating that every single month. Clearly, I mostly read dark, mysterious, and emotional books. For pace, I mostly read medium-paced book and some fast-paced. For page number, most of the books I read were between 300 and 500 pages, and 14% were over 500 and 14% were under 300. I read all fiction books. For the genres I read most of this month were young adult fantasy. I'm really back in my young adult fantasy phase right now, I would say. I've really been enjoying it. And then the next genres would be romance and contemporary. My average rating was 3.93. I had 1 2-star book, 4 4-stars, 1 4.5, and 1 5-star. Then for some additional stats in terms of format, I read 3 ebooks and 4 physical books. So I'm still doing pretty well at getting through my physical books. For audience, I read 3 adult, 1 new adult, and 3 YA. And for the race of the authors I read from 5 white authors, 1 Asian, and 1 black. And I read from all cisgender authors. So wasn't a super diverse month for me there. Okay, so let's start out with my 2-star read. All the other books I read besides this one were honestly really good. But one of the not so great books that I read was The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. If you guys didn't catch the video, I read this for a themed reading blog where I read books recommended for Geminis in honor of Gemini season and Gemini being my rising sign. This is pretty common of me to say, but I'm not a huge classics person. I thought that I would have better luck with this one because it is more of like a gothic classic, and I had better luck with Frankenstein and Dracula that I read last year, but unfortunately this just wasn't really it. I'm sure a lot of you guys know the story of Mr. Jekyll, of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and how it is this man who has a good side of his personality, a bad side of his personality, and the bad side is like taking over, and that's like the horror part of it. But unfortunately, if you already know that concept going in, this book is not very interesting because most of it is a mystery of like what's going on with these people. But if you know, then you already know. And it's a very short book, so I really don't think that it is worth it to read if you are considering reading this one. Next up, another book that I read this month and gave 4 stars to was A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. For some reason, this is the title I can't quite remember. Wings and Ruin, Act of War. So this is the 3rd book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, which I have been really enjoying. I gave the first 2 5 stars, and this one I'm only dropping a star because I just think this book was too long, which is a very common note that I have about Sarah J. Maas's books. But the first 2 in this series weren't too bad, but this one I just felt there was too much being dragged out. And I have to say, at the very end, there's like a big battle scene that's very epic, but those are not my favorite to read either, so I didn't overly enjoy that part. But if you don't know, this is about fairies and a lot of different romances between them and a lot of different like politics within this fairy world with the different courts and stuff like that. For those who have read it, I just want to say, like, does anyone else ship Feyre and Lucian? Because they are not a canon ship, but for some reason I just love those two together. So I really liked seeing a lot of their scenes in this book at the beginning. Another thing I will say I really enjoyed seeing was Nesta's character. I know that later on in the series she gets a book totally dedicated to her, so it was nice to see her and her love interest in the book. I won't say who it is, but I liked seeing their initial development and foundation. I almost wish that we saw her point of view as well in this book because I was very intrigued by what was going on over there. So I actually am quite excited to keep reading this series. It's definitely my favorite of all of Sarah J Maas's series that I've read. I think the characters are the best here. I also really like how Rhysand, who is the main guy, is not controlling of Feyre, our main heroine, like at all. He goes against a lot of those stereotypes that main guys have where they're overprotective and just want to control the main girl to protect her, but they're very like toxic. He like trusts her a lot. He lets her do her own thing while also obviously still being protective of her, and so I really like that. I didn't expect that from Sarah J Maas. I still hate all the mate stuff, and that will never be redeemed for me. I absolutely hate that stuff. Another book I read that I really quite enjoyed was A Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. This was the first book I read this month, so I don't remember it as well. It also was a one-sitting type of book, but it was really good. So I definitely highly recommend it because it is just such a quick read. It's written in verse, and it's about this boy whose brother has been murdered, and he grabs a gun and is gonna go get revenge, and the whole story takes place with him on the elevator going down his apartment building, and it is opening on each floor, and someone is coming on that is related to his life or his brother's life. Oftentimes they are already passed away, like they're ghosts. It's just sort of a reflective story about like this decision that he's going to make. You can kind of get like where the story would go, but it was really beautiful, and so I would definitely recommend it if you just want a quick moving read. The writing was very beautiful. Then we have a little thriller, and that was In a Dark Dark Wood by Ruth Ware. This was a really fun thriller. It is about our main character, who I always forget the main character's names, Nora. Oh, I have two books with main characters named Nora. But anyways, this is the main character named Nora who gets invited on this bachelorette girls weekend at this cabin in the woods. She's actually not very close with the bride-to-be anymore. They're more like childhood friends who haven't spoken in years. So it's a bit of an odd invite, but she decides to go, and then let's just say she shouldn't have. So we're seeing her experience at this cabin in the woods with a few other people, and then we're also seeing flash forwards to her in the hospital a couple days later, and someone was murdered on this trip, and it looks like she is a possible suspect. So in these flashbacks, we're seeing how we got there. Obviously, it's very mysterious. A lot of creepy things are going on, and we have this like small group of characters that are suspects in this isolated setting sort of thriller. So it has a lot of good tropes like that. I'm not saying it was like the best, like it wasn't 5 stars. There were definitely predictable things about it, but I think it was just a fun, quick time. Ruth Ware is also always really good at setting a really creepy vibe, especially in the first half of the book. And she does normally lose me in the second half, which kind of did happen in this one still, but I think it still deserves a great rating just due to the overall vibes of it, the great like mystery that she sets up in the first half. And to see more of my thoughts, you can check out my Gemini reading blog. These last 3 books are great. Like I really loved all of these last 3 books. So next we have Where Dreams Descend by Janella Angeles. I got into sort of a circusy, whimsical theater kick this month. I was really enjoying those types of vibes. If you guys didn't watch any of my vlogs this month, you might not know, but I went to New York for the first time this month, and I saw Moulin Rouge on Broadway, which, you know, has to do with kind of like burlesque, theatrical, showgirl kind of vibes. It's very dramatic and it has a lot of fun tropes, but then I also watched that movie as well, so that kind of got me into the mood of those types of things. This has like a similar vibe. So we are following 3 main characters. Our first main character, let's get their name, is Kalia, and she is a magician at this club. Unfortunately, she's not a magician that has a lot of autonomy, as she is a female magician, which in this world they are very much looked down upon. And so this other character named Jack is kind of like her master. Like she works for him and he has a lot of control over her. At the beginning of the book, she ends up escaping and going to this town that is hosting a magician competition. So she decides to enter. One of the judges in this competition is this other magician named DeMarco, and he is our other 3rd main character. She ends up blowing away the judges and actually gets into the competition despite being a woman. But then people are mysteriously dying. Like different competitors in the competition, different magicians are dying. There's a lot of mysterious things going on. Kalia's feeling haunted by Jack, who thinks might be coming after her. There's mysterious things going on with DeMarco's past, and as you can imagine, there's a romance that blooms between some of these characters. But it was really, really fun just having all of those magical stuff going on, creepy stuff going on. It was great. It was so fun. And I think the only reason I dropped a star for this one is the ending. Like, I was really waiting for a big blowout ending, a really great twist in the mystery, and I feel like it lacked a little bit there. It could be because this is a duology, so there's gonna be a second book. I already own it. I'm very excited to read it soon. But yeah, I just had such a good time reading this book. It was one of the reasons I feel like I had such a great reading month, because I was just really connecting with these types of stories. And I want to put it out there, if anyone has any other books that have to do with circuses and magic and magicians or plays, let me know, because I want to read them. It also had vibes similar to Phantom of the Opera, I should say, you know, with those mysterious killings. It kind of reminds me of Phantom of the Opera too. My second favorite book this month was none other than Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I have a whole vlog dedicated to this book where I include spoilers, and you can see my New York trip in that vlog as well. That was another thing that really worked out this month, as this book, a lot of it is talking about New York, as that's where the main characters live and grew up. And so it was really cool to be reading about this perspective of New York and how great it is, and then also be able to go there and see the reality of it this month too. If you guys for some reason haven't heard about this book, it is following our two main characters, Nora and Charlie, and they both work in the book publishing industry. So Nora is a literary agent, so she represents a lot of authors and helps them get their books sold, and then Charlie is an editor, so he edits the book. But they have a meeting at the beginning of the book, and they don't like each other. They don't hit it off, so it kind of sets up like an enemies or rivals situation. And then years later, Nora ends up going to this small town on a vacation with her sister, and Charlie is there. And so that is sort of a forced proximity thing where they start to bond. And when I would say they become friends and then lovers. So it's like a rivals to friends to lovers, which I just think is beautiful. But yeah, it deals a lot with, as I said, New York, and sort of comparing the city life with small town life. I really related to the characters regarding that, as I grew up in a small town and now live in a bigger city. There's also a lot of focus on the sister relationship between Nora and Libby, which again can be very relatable if you are a sister, as I'm an older sister. And I will say, like, the book didn't immediately grab me, as it also can be a little bit cringy, but I realized as I kept reading that it does do that on purpose. It's talking a lot about book tropes and movie tropes that you see in like romance or Hallmark movies. Nora kind of sees herself as the other woman that doesn't get the guy in romance movies or books. So what I mean is, the main guy is dating this like mean, cold-hearted girl from the city, and then he goes to a small town and ends up with a sweet small town girl. She sees herself as that like cold woman that doesn't get the guy, and that's kind of the type of person that she is. But it was so good. I love Emily Henry's books. I feel like I'm talking about this way too long, but I just think her books are literally perfection to me. She doesn't get overly silly or smutty with her books, which I don't really like. She still has a lot of fun and a lot of wit. Her characters have such good banter and such good one-liners, but then she also has like a lot of deeper, serious stuff going on that I really appreciate. But yeah, this was just another amazing romance book from her. And then the final book I read this month, and my favorite one, was Caraval by Stephanie Garber. So as I said, I was loving the carnival circusy vibes this month, and this is again one of the reasons. So if you don't know the premise of this book, we are following two sisters. What are their names? Scarlett and Tella. They live in an abusive household. Their dad is evil, and so they always want to escape from that situation, and the way Scarlett plans on doing it is marrying a man. But before she can do that, a few days before her wedding, she ends up getting tickets to Caraval, which is a magical, again, competition that travels around to different cities, and you can win something. And in this case, you win a wish. And she has been writing to the master of the Caraval for years and has never heard back, and finally she hears back and he sends her these tickets. So her and her sister go along with this guy who's like a sailor or something, like he's just gonna help them get there. She loses touch with her sister, they get split up, and then she finds out that the competition has started. Wow, we love my phone running out of storage and getting cut off. Okay, let me try and remember what I was saying. So I think I was talking about Caraval. Everyone is now just looking for Scarlett's sister Tella, including her, because obviously she wants to save her sister, but then also she could win the competition and win a wish to help her and her sister. This book was so fun. I think the romance was really, really on point. I think the main guy that was the love interest was perfect, like a perfect YA book boyfriend that you would want. And then there was this great mystery throughout involving the history of Caraval and Legend, who is the master of the Caraval. We don't know who he is throughout the entire book. His whole identity is a mystery, and it was just a really, really fun time. And again, this dealt with sisters as well, if you like reading about sisters. Yeah, I'm a little bit thrown off because of my camera issue, but this was just such an amazing book. I can't wait to read the rest of the series, although I'm a little sad because I think the point of view changes and we're not following Scarlett anymore, but we're following Tella. But this had a great little twist cliffhanger at the end. Just was a really, really fun book. So highly recommend. And yeah, that's going to be my wrap up for the month of May. Let me know if you guys have read any of these books and what your thoughts were. And I hope you guys have a great June, and I'll see you in my next video next week.